Welcome to Forbidden Files. In the far northwest of Russia, 150 miles north of the Arctic Circle, there is a rusted metal cap bolted to the ground, surrounded by rubble. In the middle of nowhere, beneath that cap, a hole 9 inches wide descends 12,262 meters straight into the earth, deeper than the Mariana Trench, deeper than Mount Everest is tall. The deepest hole human beings have ever drilled. And when Soviet scientists finally reached the bottom, what they found completely rewrote everything we thought we knew about the planet beneath our feet. This is the Kola Peninsula, one of the most remote regions of Russia, a flat, frozen landscape jutting into the Barents Sea near the borders of Norway and Finland. In May 1970, Soviet scientists arrived here and began drilling. They were not looking for oil. They were not looking for minerals. They were trying to reach the mantle of the Earth itself. To understand what they were attempting, consider this. The Earth has a radius of 6,371 kilometers. The deepest mine in the world, the Mponeng gold mine in South Africa, reaches 4 kilometers below the surface. That is 0.06% of the way to the center. The Kola borehole reached 12.2 kilometers. That is 0.19% of the way to the center. In other words, the deepest hole ever drilled by human beings barely scratches the surface of what lies beneath us. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about what is 50 kilometers below our feet. The project was born from the same competitive fever that drove the space race. In the late 1950s, as the United States and Soviet Union were racing to put men in orbit, they were also, quietly, racing in the opposite direction, down. The Americans launched Project Mohole in 1961, an attempt to drill through the ocean floor off Mexico to reach the Earth's mantle. They proved deep ocean drilling was possible. Then Congress cut the funding in 1966. The Soviets saw their opportunity. The Soviet goal was audacious. Drill to 15 kilometers, deep enough to reach the Mohorovicic discontinuity, the boundary between the Earth's crust and the mantle. The Moho, as scientists call it, had been detected by seismic measurements but never physically reached. Nobody had ever touched mantle rock. The Soviets intended to be the first. Drilling began on May 24, 1970. Almost immediately, the engineers encountered a problem. Conventional drilling, rotating the entire drill string to turn the bit, would not work at these depths. The weight of the drill string alone would exceed 1 million pounds. The torque required to rotate it would be physically impossible to generate. Soviet engineers invented a solution, a rotary drill bit that spun independently at the end of the pipe, powered by the drilling mud pumped down through the pipe. The pipe itself stayed still. Only the bit turned. It was a fundamental engineering innovation, and it worked. The drilling proceeded slowly, and with frequent interruptions. The drill string would break and have to be pulled out. Equipment failures sent the project back weeks or months. The drill bit itself had to be completely replaced every few hundred meters. Each replacement required hauling the entire drill string, miles of pipe, back to the surface before the new bit could be lowered again. In 1979, 9 years after drilling began, the Kola borehole passed 9,583 meters, breaking the previous world record held by an American oil well in Oklahoma. Soviet scientists celebrated, but they were barely halfway to their goal. They kept drilling. In 1983, the drill passed 12,000 meters. Soviet scientists erupted in jubilation. They had gone deeper into the Earth than any human-made object in history. But the deeper they went, the stranger things became. Before the borehole, geologists had a clear model of what Earth's crust looked like. Seismic measurements had shown a distinct change in rock properties at around 7 kilometers depth, a boundary called the Conrad discontinuity. The standard interpretation: above the boundary was granite, below it, basalt. Denser, heavier rock. This was the accepted model, taught in textbooks, used in calculations around the world. At 7 kilometers down, the drill cores told a different story. No basalt, more granite. The rock had not changed type at all. The seismic boundary that everyone had interpreted as a change in rock composition was actually caused by the granite itself being metamorphosed by pressure and heat into a denser, more crystalline form. The rock was the same. The physics acting on it had changed it. Everything geologists thought they knew about the structure of the continental crust had to be revised. Then came the water. At depths where no water should exist, where the pressure and temperature were supposed to have driven all moisture from the rock billions of years ago, the drill cores were wet. Water. Miles beneath the surface of the earth. Not water that had seeped down from the surface. Water that had been squeezed out of the rock itself by the immense pressure. Water molecules trapped in the crystal structure of minerals released by the drilling. This was water that had been locked inside the earth for billions of years, and nobody had predicted it would be there. At 6.7 kilometers, the drill cores brought up something even more unexpected: fossils. 24 species of microscopic marine organisms, single-celled creatures, preserved in rock 2 billion years old. Intact. 2 billion years old, half the age of the earth, and still recognizable. Digi. Life had existed in places and at times that the scientific community had not imagined. Pause. The boundary of what could be called a habitable environment was being pushed deeper into both time and space simultaneously. But as the drill descended further, a different problem was building: the temperature. Scientists had predicted that at 12 kilometers depth, the temperature would be approximately 100 degrees Celsius. Hot, but manageable with the right equipment. The actual temperature at 12 kilometers was 180 degrees Celsius, nearly double the prediction. Nearly double the prediction. At 180 degrees Celsius, under immense pressure, the rock stopped behaving like rock. It became plastic, semi-fluid. The borehole walls would close in on the drill string. Equipment that was designed to operate in solid rock was now operating in something closer to very slow-moving lava. Drill bits that should have lasted for days were being destroyed in hours. The rock was closing around the equipment faster than it could be drilled away. Medium pause. In 1992, drilling stopped. Not because they had reached their target, not because they had found everything they were looking for, but because the equipment could no longer function in the conditions at the bottom of the hole. The temperature had beaten them. The Soviet Union itself was collapsing, funding was disappearing, and the hole that had taken 22 years to drill could go no further. They had reached 12,262 meters, 2,738 meters short of their 15-kilometer target. The facility was officially closed in 1995. The buildings were left to deteriorate. Equipment was abandoned where it stood. And in 2005, after years of neglect, Russia announced plans to destroy the borehole. The hole itself was sealed with a metal cap bolted to a concrete plug. The deepest point ever reached by human beings, closed with a piece of rusted metal you could lift with one hand. But the story did not end there. In the late 1980s, while drilling was still ongoing, a story began circulating in Finland. Then it spread to religious media in the United States. Then it spread everywhere. The story claimed that Soviet scientists at the Kola borehole had lowered a heat-resistant microphone into the hole and heard screaming. Human screaming. From deep in the earth. From deep in the earth, a Christian television network in the United States broadcast the story. It included an audio recording described as the actual sound of souls screaming in hell, captured by Soviet equipment at the bottom of the world's deepest hole. The story went worldwide. Newspapers repeated it. Churches preached about it. Millions of people believed it. It was entirely fabricated. The audio recording used in the broadcasts was taken from a 1972 horror film. No microphone exists that could survive 180 degrees Celsius at the bottom of a borehole. No human screaming could propagate through 12 kilometers of solid rock. And the temperature at the bottom, while extraordinary, was nowhere near the temperatures described in religious accounts of the afterlife. The well to hell was one of the earliest viral hoaxes of the modern era, spread by tabloid newspapers and religious broadcasters decades before social media existed. Spread by tabloid newspapers and religious broadcasters decades before social media existed, centuries past 20 years in plenary. What the borehole actually found was more interesting than the myth. It proved that our model of Earth's crust was wrong. It found water where no water should exist. It found life preserved in rock 2 billion years old. It found temperatures that physics said should not be there. Every prediction failed. The Earth beneath our feet is stranger, hotter, wetter, and more alive than any model predicted. Darn. The race to go deeper has not ended. In November 2024, China launched a giant scientific research vessel called Shang, capable of drilling up to 11 kilometers into the seafloor. The goal, to finally reach the Earth's mantle through the thinner oceanic crust. Where the Soviets drilled through continental crust and ran out of technology, China is trying a different approach. The competition to understand what lies beneath us continues, just with different players. Somewhere in the tundra of northern Russia, surrounded by the ruins of the facility that once held it, a rusted metal cap sits bolted to the ground. 9 inches wide, 12,262 meters deep. The deepest point human beings have ever reached inside the planet they live on. Sealed, abandoned, and still, by a wide margin, the record. For 22 years, Soviet scientists drilled into the Earth and found that everything they thought they knew was wrong. No basalt where basalt should be. Water where no water should exist. Life where life was impossible. Temperature that broke their equipment and ended their project. The deepest hole ever drilled taught us one thing above everything else. The Earth beneath our feet is far stranger than we imagined. And we have barely scratched the surface. If this made you think differently about what is beneath you right now, drop it in the comments. We read every one. And if you want more stories about the things we thought we understood, subscribe. The next file is already open.